Alright, Cowboys Nation, stop what you are doing right now because the front office just did something that nobody saw coming, and honestly, it might be the most important move of this entire offseason. And before we get into everything, I need you to smash that subscribe button because here at Cowboys Live News, we are on top of every single update the moment it drops. And trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming next because this story is developing fast. So here is what just happened and why every single Cowboys fan needs to be paying attention right now. Stephen Jones came out publicly and confirmed that the team has been actively working on a long-term contract extension for Brandon Aubrey, and not just casually talking about it, they have been exchanging actual offers back and forth with his representation for quite some time now. That alone should tell you how serious Dallas is about keeping their franchise kicker in the building. But here's where things get really interesting and where this whole situation takes a turn that nobody expected. Stephen Jones also made it crystal clear that if negotiations do not result in a deal before free agency kicks off, the Cowboys are fully prepared to place either a first-round tender or a second-round tender on Aubrey to ensure they do not lose him for nothing. Now, if you are sitting there thinking, wait, that sounds like leverage, you are absolutely right. And the crazy part is this might be the most calculated negotiation tactic we have seen from the Jones family in years. Let me break this down for you because understanding how restricted free agency works is crucial to understanding why this situation could go in so many different directions. Brandon Aubrey is not an unrestricted free agent. He is restricted, which means the Cowboys have significant control over what happens next. If Dallas places a tender on him, any team in the league can negotiate with Aubrey and try to sign him to an offer sheet, but here is the catch. The Cowboys have what is called right of first refusal. That means if another team offers Aubrey a deal, Dallas gets to look at that contract and decide whether they want to match it and keep him. If they match, Aubrey stays a Cowboy on those exact terms. If they decline to match, then and only then does Aubrey leave, and in exchange the Cowboys receive a draft pick from that team based on the tender level they set. So if they place a first-round tender, they get a first-round pick. If they place a second-round tender, they get a second-round pick. And this is where the whole conversation gets complicated because now you have to start asking yourself some really uncomfortable questions about value and about what this team actually needs to compete for a championship. Now, let me be completely honest with you because I know some of you are already typing in the comments saying we need to keep Aubrey at all costs, and I hear you, I really do. This man has been absolutely electric since he came into the league. He has one of the strongest legs we have ever seen. He has hit clutch kicks from distances that most kickers would not even attempt, and he has quickly become one of the most beloved players on this roster. The fans love him, the locker room loves him, and the coaching staff clearly values what he brings to the table every single week. So this is not about wanting him gone. This is about understanding the reality of the situation and the business side of football that sometimes fans do not want to acknowledge. But here's what nobody is talking about, and this is where things get really interesting. Brandon Aubrey is represented by Athletes First, and if you know anything about that agency, you know they have a reputation for getting their clients record-breaking contracts, especially when those clients are at the top of their position group. They do not settle, they do not take discount deals, they push for maximum value every single time. And right now, Brandon Aubrey is arguably the best kicker in football, which means Athletes First is almost certainly trying to get him a contract that blows the current market out of the water. Currently, the highest paid kicker in the NFL is Harrison Butker, who signed a deal with the Chiefs that pays him roughly $6.4 million per year. That was the new benchmark. That was the record when it happened. Now, logic would say that Aubrey probably deserves something in the $7 to $8 million range, maybe pushing toward $9 given his performance and the trajectory he is on. That would make him the highest paid kicker in league history. It would be fair compensation for what he brings, and it would give the Cowboys exactly what they want, which is long-term stability at one of the most important specialist positions in football. But what if that is not what Athletes First is asking for? What if they are pushing for something closer to $10 million or even beyond that? What if they are looking at this situation and saying, look, this guy is special, this guy is transcendent at his position, and we want generational wealth for him? I am not saying that is definitively what is happening, but the fact that Stephen Jones came out publicly and mentioned that offers have been exchanged back and forth multiple times tells me there is some level of disagreement on what the final number should be. If both sides were close, this deal would probably already be done. The fact that it is not done yet, and the fact that Stephen Jones felt the need to mention the tender possibility publicly, suggests that there might be a significant gap between what the Cowboys want to pay and what Aubrey's camp is demanding. And this is where I need you to really think about something, because it is going to challenge some of your assumptions about how you build a championship roster. Would you trade Brandon Aubrey right now for a first-round pick in this year's draft? I know, that sounds crazy at first, but just sit with it for a second. Think about where the Cowboys are as an organization right now. They have a top-tier offense with Dak Prescott locked up, with CeeDee Lamb locked up, with most of their key offensive pieces secured for the foreseeable future. The offense is not the problem. The problem has been the defense. The problem has been a lack of depth at key positions. The problem has been not having enough premium talent on the other side of the ball to stop anyone when it matters most. Now imagine adding another first-round pick to this draft class. Imagine having 2 first-round selections to address those defensive needs. Imagine being able to grab a cornerstone pass rusher and a lockdown corner in the same draft. That is the kind of draft haul that changes franchises. That is the kind of draft capital that can turn a good team into a great team almost overnight. So is it worth considering? Honestly, I think you have to at least think about it, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Now, before anyone loses their mind in the comments, let me be clear about something. I am not saying the Cowboys should trade Aubrey. I am not saying they want to trade Aubrey. Everything we have heard suggests that the organization loves this player and wants him here for the long haul. What I am saying is that Stephen Jones mentioning the tender possibility was not accidental. That was a message. That was the front office using the media to send a signal to the other side of the negotiation table. The message is simple. We want to get this done. We are willing to pay fair market value, but if you push too hard, if you try to hold us hostage for some outrageous number, we have options. We can tender him, let someone else offer a ridiculous contract, decline to match, and walk away with a premium draft pick as compensation. It is leverage, pure and simple, and honestly, it is pretty smart negotiating. The Cowboys are essentially saying we have backup plans, so do not think you can strong-arm us into overpaying just because Aubrey is special. But here is the other side of that coin, and this is something you need to consider as well. Kickers are replaceable to some degree, right? We have seen young guys come into the league and perform at a high level almost immediately. We have seen teams find gem kickers in later rounds of the draft, or even as undrafted free agents. The success of Brandon Aubrey himself, a guy with a soccer background who was not a traditional football kicker, has actually opened teams' eyes to alternative pathways for finding elite leg talent. So theoretically, you could let Aubrey go, pocket a first-round pick, and then try to find another kicker through the draft or free agency, or even by scouting guys with unconventional backgrounds. It is a gamble, absolutely, but it is not as crazy as it might sound at first. The question is whether that gamble is worth taking when you already have a proven commodity who has performed at an elite level in pressure situations. And I think the answer to that question really depends on what number we are talking about. If Aubrey's camp is asking for $8 million a year, you pay it without hesitation and move on. If they are asking for $12 or $13 million and want to make him the highest paid kicker by an absurd margin, then maybe you start having harder conversations about value and opportunity cost. Let me also address something that Mike McCarthy mentioned multiple times last season because it is relevant to this discussion. He said publicly that he does not want to be in a position where the Cowboys are depending on their kicker to win games by hitting 50 and 60-yard field goals consistently. Now, on one hand, that is an incredible luxury to have. How many teams in the NFL would kill to have a kicker who can reliably bang through attempts from that distance? It is a weapon, it extends your range on the field, and it changes how opposing defenses have to play you. But on the other hand, McCarthy's point was valid. Championship teams score touchdowns. Championship teams put the ball in the end zone. If your offense is stalling out in opposing territory and you are constantly settling for long field goals instead of finishing drives, that is not sustainable in January when you are playing elite competition in elimination games. So there is a philosophical question here about how much you value kicker production versus investing those resources elsewhere to improve your ability to actually reach the end zone. It is not a simple answer, and reasonable people can disagree on it. Now, let me tell you what I think the most likely outcome is here, because I have been watching this team for a long time, and I have a pretty good feel for how the Jones family operates. I think this deal gets done before we ever get to the tender stage. I think the public comments from Stephen Jones were designed to create urgency and establish leverage, but I also think the Cowboys genuinely want Aubrey on a long-term contract and are willing to make him the highest paid kicker in the league to get it done. My guess is they end up somewhere in the $7 to $8.5 million range annually. Aubrey gets his bag, the Cowboys get their franchise kicker locked up for the next 4 or 5 years, and everybody moves on happy. But I could be wrong, and if the gap between the two sides is bigger than I am assuming, then this whole situation could get very interesting very quickly. The tender deadline is approaching, free agency is right around the corner, and every day that passes without a deal creates more uncertainty and more opportunities for other teams to start getting involved. And honestly, the fact that the Cowboys are working on this now, ahead of the combine, ahead of free agency, tells you something important about how this front office is approaching the offseason differently. Remember last year and the year before when it felt like nothing was happening until the last possible minute? Remember the frustration of watching other teams make moves while Dallas sat on their hands? That appears to be changing. The Javonte Williams signing showed they are willing to move quickly on veteran free agents. The Aubrey extension talks show they are being proactive about locking up their own guys. There is a different energy coming from the building right now, a sense of urgency that we have not always seen from this organization. Is it enough? We will find out. But at least they are showing signs of understanding that this offseason matters, that the window with this core group is not infinite, and that you cannot just assume everything will work out if you wait until the last second to address your needs. So where does this leave us as fans? Well, I think we are in a pretty good spot, honestly. The worst case scenario here is still not terrible. Either Aubrey signs a long-term extension and remains our kicker for years to come, which is obviously the preferred outcome, or he gets tendered, another team offers him a massive contract, Dallas decides the value is too high, and we get a premium draft pick in return. Neither of those outcomes is catastrophic. The only way this becomes a disaster is if somehow Aubrey ends up leaving and we get nothing in return. And based on what Stephen Jones said, that is not going to happen. The tender ensures we get compensated if he walks. So breathe easy, Cowboys Nation. This situation is under control, even if the final resolution is still unclear. But I do want to hear from you in the comments, because this is the kind of topic where fans have strong opinions, and I want to know where you stand. If another team offered Brandon Aubrey a contract worth $12 million a year, would you want the Cowboys to match it? Or would you rather take the first round pick and use those resources elsewhere? There is no wrong answer here. It really comes down to how you value positional importance and how much risk you are willing to accept in trying to replace him. Some of you are going to say, pay the man whatever it takes, because having an elite kicker changes games, and we have seen that with our own eyes. Others are going to say no kicker in the history of football is worth $12 million when you have so many other holes to fill on the roster. Both perspectives are valid, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Drop your take in the comments right now and let us get a conversation going, because that is what makes this community so special. We actually talk about this stuff and debate it and learn from each other. I also want to say this because I think it is important. Regardless of how these contract negotiations play out, Brandon Aubrey has already cemented himself as a fan favorite and one of the most exciting players on this roster. The guy came into the league with an unconventional background, proved all the doubters wrong, and has performed at an elite level when the lights were brightest. That does not get forgotten no matter what happens next. If he stays, we celebrate. If he goes, we thank him for what he gave us and wish him well. That is how you handle these situations as a fan base. But personally, and I will give you my real opinion here at the end, I think the Cowboys need to get this deal done and keep Aubrey in Dallas. The difference between a good kicker and a great kicker shows up in December and January. The difference between a guy who can hit from 52 and a guy who can hit from 61 might be the difference between a playoff win and a playoff loss. You do not let that kind of talent walk unless the price becomes truly absurd, and I have faith that both sides will find common ground before it gets to that point. Lock him up, pay him what he deserves, and let us move on to addressing the other needs on this roster, because there is still a lot of work to do if this team wants to compete for a championship next season. Alright, Cowboys Nation, that is going to wrap up this one, but before you click away, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because we are going to have updates on this situation the second anything develops, and you do do not want to be the last one to find out what happens. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment letting me know your thoughts on the Aubrey situation. Should the Cowboys pay whatever it takes, or should they be willing to walk away for a first-round pick? I cannot wait to read your responses, and I will see you in the next video. Stay locked in, and as always, go Cowboys!